had over 60 sessions this year, and they really ranged in from 100 to 300 level topics. Just wanted to highlight a couple that were just launched this week. What I love about these is you can just see right off the bat, looking at the slide, some really good insights. How you should be talking to your leaders about savings and spend reductions, how you should be communicating to engineers on why we need to be doing cost allocation of shared costs. And so if I'm in your boat right now, I'm going out and I'm soaking up all of this content and figuring out how I can go apply this back to my practice, or even just soaking it up to see if it can validate where I'm at.
We also are now well into the 1.0 effort. We're targeting for November 12th for the release for that. And really important here, we've kicked off the open source software efforts for the converters as well. You're going to hear a little bit more about that here coming up.
Traditionally, what we'd had them do was take that FinOps certified practitioner training, which, listen, it's great. I love it. I'm a big fan of that training and that certification, but it's not necessary for everybody. So what we went ahead and did is created some adjacent trainings that are specific to personas that might be working with your FinOps team that need to understand what's that common language, what is that nomenclature that they need to understand to really connect, so you can spend less time educating them and more time collaborating and working.
My experience was epic. I think that's the only word I can use to describe it at first. Being at X, it's just amazing to be able to connect, network, and learn from folks in the community. But I think the best part about it, and JR, I know you mentioned this, is the people. It really was welcome home. I think I left there so excited, re-energized to come back to my team and bring all those learnings back.
Just seeing the number of attendees grow was huge. And then what I thought was also super interesting, just hearing from some of the keynote speakers from various industries and how they're applying FinOps from looking at costs differently, not just dollars, but from a sustainability standpoint. The frequency at which folks are understanding and monitoring costs, like Walmart mentioned, on a daily basis. That's pretty incredible for an organization that large to have that permeated within the culture.
So it was just so much fun to hear different perspectives from different industries and see where we were doing well and where we weren't. I kind of thought of this conference as a whole as like either validation or education. So it was either validation of what we were doing well at Adobe, or education on what we can do better.
Networking. Here's another one that surprised us a little bit when we came across this, which is that a lot of organizations start with the default networking for all of their accounts and their VPCs and so on. And you find that all of your network traffic moves over the internet instead of moving through simple things like VPC endpoints. And that causes tons of additional cost and waste.
All of our working groups are focused on a particular FinOps capability, a particular FinOps challenge, which is featured in the working group name. I think working groups so far have produced over 30 outputs to date, and we have more than 16 active today.
All right. Well, welcome to the August FinOps Summit. I affectionately refer to this summit as Ashley Summit because she was the one who pushed for us to do a working group rundown, which is a large part of what we're going to cover today. We started this last year. It's the second time we've done this. But before we get into the working group rundown, we're going to do a FinOps X recap. So we're going to talk a little bit about the themes that we saw at the event. We're going to talk about some of the announcements like the Focus Open Billing spec. And we've got a TAC panel from the Technical Advisory Council of folks who are recently joined, who are at the event to share some of their experiences and also talk through some of those updates. We're going to welcome a new board member, Rahul from CloudFix, who's going to talk about usage statistics. And then we're going to get into the really meaty bits of this, which is all of the working groups. So there are 16 simultaneous working groups running. I don't think we're going to hear from all of them today, but they are open source best practices that these folks are putting out, and then get into some breakouts, not breakups. Gosh, I hope the working groups stay together. So for those of you who are new to the FinOps Foundation, we are part of the Linux Foundation, and we are a group that is focused on advancing the people who manage the value of cloud. And we do that through three big areas. The first is connections, conversations, community. FinOps X is an example of that. The summit is an example of one of those, the Slack community, and some of the events that we're going to talk about later. We also do a lot of certification, education, training, mentorship programs. In fact, that's a big part of how the foundation funds itself. So if you ever want to get certified, we would love to get you certified as well. And we focus a lot on open source best practices, which is these working groups, open billing data. It's everything you see on FinOps.org that you can pick up and take to advance your practice. So as I mentioned, we've got some new board members who've joined, and I wanted to welcome them. I don't think we've got all of them on the call, but we're going to hear from at least Kim later. Kim Weir is joining the governing board because she's become the chairperson of the Technical Advisory Council, and that gets her governing board seat. Kim is from Target. We also welcome Scott Johnson from Equifax, Dave Khan from EY, Melvin Brown from the US Government OPM Office, and Ann Johnston from Capital One. The two Johnston and Johnstons have no relation, but Equifax and Capital One have both joined our enterprise membership program, which is another way the foundation funds itself. It's a formal membership program. And EY has joined as part of the vendor partner program. Melvin has been appointed to help represent the US government and the efforts there to adopt these standards. We're going to hear a little bit about his talk later as well. So the big thing that we wanted to talk about and cover today, from my side anyway, is FinOps X. This happened it's been a little over a month now. Personally, it was one of the hardest projects that I've ever done in terms of the work effort that we all put into it, and also one of the most rewarding. The event was basically the biggest gathering of FinOps practitioners that's ever happened on the planet. We had targeted to get 1,000 people at the event. We ended up selling it out. We sold almost 1,100 tickets, almost 1,200 tickets. And a few hundred people, unfortunately, were still ended up on the waiting list that we just weren't able to accommodate this year. The great thing also was the caliber of attendees and the conversations. We had some of the biggest companies and cloud spenders in the world there. I ended up with, this number kind of blew me away. We had 30 of the Fortune 50 in attendance at this conference on site, over a dozen government agencies, and attendance from all 4 of the major cloud providers. The really great thing, though, was the people. And we've heard a lot of feedback. As much as people love the content and hearing all the updates and best practices, they wanted to find more time to connect with each other. We were designing it very much so you could turn to anybody in the coffee line and anybody around, and you could talk about what FinOps is, right? Not just necessarily FinOps, and not explain what it is you do. So as part of my opening keynotes, I focused on a message of welcome home. Because when I'm out there in most of the world, and I have to try and explain to everyone else what I do, it's very hard to explain to my parents at a dinner party. At this conference, people were together with others who do the same work they do. And that quality of conversation was able to be elevated pretty spectacularly. I shared a lot of stats. All these, by the way, keynotes are available on YouTube now. You can watch them around the growth of this community. We started 3 or 4 years ago with 26 people, and now we're over 11,000 practitioners strong. We now have 48 of the Fortune 50 participating in the foundation programs and 9 of the Fortune 10. And I put these photos on the bottom of the front row. All these people on the 2 photos were in the front row. For me, it was both humbling and it was a bit scary to look down and see these advanced practitioners from JP Morgan Chase, from Disney, from Salesforce. There were people from Amazon and Microsoft and Google sitting down there. And this community was coming together to connect. The shot in the top right was really what we're trying to focus on, which is even in the middle of keynotes, we encourage people to stop, get up, and have conversations with each other. Some of the big themes that came out in the keynotes focused around that FinOps has now been elevated to a board level concern. We're seeing a lot of C-level folks get involved. We're seeing CEOs be briefed on it and its impact. There was a big theme of FinOps continuing to be a team sport. It's not something that one person or even one individual team can implement. It's got to be spread across the organization. It's got to touch a lot of different people, and it's got to have wide involvement. Data in the path of the engineer and the business was huge. So many people talking about getting the right data in front of the right people at the right time. And a big trend is that FinOps has very much become a core part of engineering now for organizations running in cloud. A couple of highlights from speakers. Natalie Daly from HSBC did a fantastic talk around how their run stage practice is continuing to grow and evolve. They're bringing in sustainability data to help influence decisions. They're looking at the wider value proposition. They're doing what she called full stack FinOps, looking across all different types of technology. And she shared some really great, this top slide of how they have different parts of the capabilities of their practice at different areas. Tim O'Brien from Walmart talked about the scale of the Fortune 1 and how for them, they spend a lot of time figuring out how to influence engineers through very focused daily spin data, through making that data relevant and impactful and getting it out to the right people. We also had both the CIO and CFO from Equifax, RJ and Scott, who dug into the shared accountability that happens between those teams and how they're working together. The day 2 keynotes, different set of YouTube videos you can go watch. I encourage you to check these out. We're very focused around the impact of FinOps and the teams. Melvin Brown showed how the US government special interest group is working to deploy best practices and standards specific to public sector. Kim Weir from Target talked about how teams are growing and scaling, how she's hiring different skill sets, how they're building a lot of their own tooling and visibility. I think the most impactful takeaway for me might have been listening to Rich Deck from Adobe, though, share that their 10-year practice of FinOps has enabled them in this last couple of years to pull enough focus and efficiency and savings out that they were able to reinvest and build an entirely new product, Adobe Firefly, which has changed the trajectory of the company. And he shared a lot of the history of how they got there. This panel was probably one of the most exciting things. I can't believe we pulled it off, to be honest. We had VPs from 3 cloud providers on stage, those running specifically the billing and commerce practices at these cloud providers. We had Google, Microsoft, and Oracle all agreed to be there. And they shared where they thought this industry was going and how they thought the clouds were going to react to the focus on efficiency and their own individual focus in the data, how they're trying to lean into open specifications. Definitely recommend checking this out. Jen Hayes from Fidelity, our chairperson of the governing board, did a masterful job facilitating and moderating this conversation. Ashley Ramako, you managed hundreds of speakers, 145 speakers. Could you share a little bit about some of these highlights from some of the talks and the breakouts as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We had over 60 sessions this year, and they really ranged in from 100 to 300 level topics. Really being an open source community, all of these will be put on our YouTube channel. I just wanted to highlight a couple that were just launched this week. What I love about these is you can just see right off the bat, looking at the slide, some really good insights. How you should be talking to your leaders about savings and spend reductions, how you should be communicating to engineers on why we need to be doing cost allocation of shared costs. And so if I'm in your boat right now, I'm going out and I'm soaking up all of this content and figuring out how I can go apply this back to my practice, or even just soaking it up to see if it can validate where I'm at and help me accelerate. So check these out, take a lot of notes, and then, start a discussion around them, give some feedback to the speakers as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I heard one of the challenges people had was there were so many good talks going on that people had struggling to decide where to go to as part of that process. So we're looking at how to add more time and ability to get into more content next year. At the end of all this, we also had a lot of fun. There was a huge party. We had over, I think it was 950 of the attendees total came to the party. It was on the deck of an aircraft carrier at sunset. We did community awards there. We had a great welcome networking reception by the pool on the first day. And honestly, the cool thing looking around, in addition to the conversations, was people seemed to be having a lot of fun. There was actual dancing at a tech conference, which I thought was crazy. There were some great meetings from different sets of groups in the community. The Women in FinOps group on the top right got together on the aircraft carrier. The FinOps professionals did. And yes, we did, in fact, have one Tom Cruise impersonator who I think took thousands of amazing selfies with the group, and everybody seemed to be really excited about. Want to give a thank you as well to our sponsors, particularly the Platinum Gold sponsors, who showed up with a lot of experts. There were product leaders, there were service leaders, there were engineering leaders from these organizations who were interacting with the community. And one of the funniest tidbits from talking to some of these folks afterwards and getting their debriefs was they were amazed and challenged by the depths of conversations that the practitioners in the expo hall brought to their booths and how they were able to get into really deep conversations about how they do things and the strategy of it, not just, again, what they do. So that was cool to see. The venue, as you see as well, was great. We had lots of natural light and open space and was a really nice flow. So we did hear a lot of great things about the event. We were very happy with overall feedback. But I want to say, we are actively planning the 2024 event now. And so we would like to hear from you, reach out to us, drop a note in the Slack channel or email us and, let us know what you want to see improved or changed for next year, because we want to refine this to be better and better. Oops, skipped ahead there a little bit. One of the cool things that we saw happen was on the badges, we put these QR codes, which actually linked directly to people's LinkedIn. The app that we used to do that saw over 6,000 connections that were made on site at that conference during that time. So that's really the point of this, connections and bringing people together. We do have the next conference coming up, and we want your feedback, but we're also now starting to look for speakers at the event. There is a photo gallery available online now as well that you can check out. But there are a lot more connections and opportunities coming up for you to start to engage. Our shared services team that puts on our events does an amazing work since FinOps X to launch now 6 planned roadshows in key cities in North America and Europe. There are also meetups happening in all major territories in the world. And we're going to be at all 4 of the major cloud events this fall with attached events or speakers there as well. So definitely go to the website, FinOps.org, to the events page, and take a look at these activities and events coming up. The first one that's happening, and if you want to dive in, if you're going to be in San Francisco at the end of this month, whether you're at Google Next, which is a conference happening there, or not, we have an attached event. Space is really limited. I'm going to be there. Udam from the Focus Project is going to be there. We've got a bunch of great companies who have signed up and individual practitioners as well. So definitely apply to join that one if you can. There's a few spots left, but it is almost full as an FYI. Cool. So with that, let's get into a little bit more about the Focus Project, which was one of the biggest announcements there. Udam, chairperson of that project, did a great keynote address on the high level. And then he and Mike Fuller did a breakout session as well. That was one of the most packed ones there. Standing room only. I tried to get in it. I couldn't even get through the door. So Udam, we'd love to hear a little bit of the overview and your experience at the conference.
Yeah, thanks, JR. Lots happening in the world of Focus. As JR said last time we talked at X, we announced the 0.5 release of the specification. So then in the last 3 or 4 weeks, what we've done is we started the 1.0 effort to take this to the next step. Just a quick overview of Focus for those that are not familiar. Focus provides a common schema and terminology for cost and usage data. Today, you receive a lot of proprietary data from your cloud and SaaS providers. That makes it really hard for you to do FinOps, especially at scale, because you have to understand every data set and their intricacies. It leads to siloed reporting in your organization and siloed cost management practices. Most of you here are practitioners, so you already know the challenges with the billing data sets. With Focus, you have this common schema and terminology. With that, you're able to do common FinOps capabilities like budgeting and forecasting and chargeback using a single set of instructions, regardless of who produced that data. And with this simplified data, it also removes the biggest blocker organizations face when trying to take FinOps to the edges of your organization. Remember, FinOps starts with that informed stage, and that's really where Focus makes the biggest impact. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of excitement around Focus. We saw it at X. There's broad recognition of the problem, the need for better transparency in cost and usage data. Since FinOps X, I would say there's also a lot of optimism and confidence that us as a community can solve this challenging problem. As of today, there's 64 members signed up from 45 organizations here. You can see providers, practitioner organizations, and vendors and service providers all coming together here to sit at the table and go solve this problem. So it's really exciting for us. Next one. With the increased membership, we've also expanded the maintainer group for Focus beyond myself. Now we also have 8 new maintainers. If you see these folks around, please thank them for their commitment and work on this project to help take FinOps to this the next level. And the next one. Just to summarize where we're at, obviously we did the 0.5 release. That's available. You can go on our website, finops.focus.org, and download the specification. We also are now well into the 1.0 effort. We're targeting for November 12th for the release for that. And really important here, we've kicked off the open source software efforts for the converters as well. You're going to hear a little bit more about that here coming up in the next slide. And just to give you a quick peek at what's inside 1.0, what are we focused on? Really, we're focused on expanding the specification. So that's what the vertical squads is. 8 squads working on this now. Vertical squads are working on expanding the specification, looking at things like pricing and usage quantities and discounts and other business context, bringing business context data into the cost and usage data. And then the horizontal squads are looking across the specification, looking at things like expansion into SaaS, as well as working backwards from the FinOps practitioner use cases to make sure that we're putting things into the specification that solve specific needs for the practitioners. So just where to get involved, chat-focus is probably the easiest place to get in touch with me and the group. Focus.finops.org, like I mentioned. I want to leave you all with a few last things here. As we get this 1.0 work done and we get providers on board on this and build out these connectors, what I would like for you all to think about is, what does this mean for your organization in terms of the benefits you can receive? What is the roadmap for your organization to adopt Focus? You're going to hear a lot more about this in the coming months here, but we want you to think about this because your organizations are starting to do planning for next year. We want you to think about how Focus is going to benefit your organization and how you're going to adopt this. And just a reminder, like I did at FinOps X, there's a set of providers that are really leaning in here. There's also other providers that are not yet involved in Focus or have not mentioned that they're going to adopt Focus. Make sure you're knocking on their doors and letting them know that you as practitioners and consumers of cloud really need this and would like to see them lean in here and will provide this benefit to all of us. And then, breakout session later on, we'll do some Q&A. We'll go more in depth into anything you all want to talk about. So thank you so much.
Great stuff, Udam. Your work and the team's work has been really impressive. And +1 to what he said, if your cloud provider is not yet engaged, please reach out to them and encourage them to become part of this. This benefits everybody, practitioners, cloud providers, adds trust to the data and accelerates your ability to get value out of cloud. So looking forward to seeing more coming on that. Next thing we announced was the FinOps Landscape. Steve Trask, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. First of all, it was great to see so many of you at FinOps X, and looking forward to those who couldn't make it at the upcoming events that the team and the community is working so hard on. So with the growth of FinOps tools and services available, and also practitioner usage rising to an average just over four tools, there is a lot of complexity in this area. Over the beginning of the year, the team at the foundation have created a community resource. It's called the FinOps Landscape. The landscape helps bring clarity to this area on the tools and services and which capabilities they kind of cover. We launched at FinOps X with foundation members tooling, services and trainings offerings. And over time, we're going to add more open source projects as they develop, and also FinOps offerings, and also keeping things up to date because new features are released all the time, as you know, following the kind of announcements in Slack. I will stress this is not a scoring or ranking tool, but it's a discovery tool that aims to kind of bring clarity that's required in this complex area. So please check it out. There are filters, use the filters in domain areas, cloud providers, other segments, and please contribute feedback. We obviously want to improve, make this better, make it a valuable tool for you. I also want to give a shout out to Vaz, Rob, and Sam Benson on the team that put so much work into this to get it ready for X. And we're looking forward to future developments on this in the coming months and make it valuable for yourselves. So do reach out, just let us know, but please enjoy.
Perfect. Yeah, we're also looking to see, as Steve mentioned, how this gets into open source offerings. We're now working with a number of the cloud providers to figure out how to better discover their native tools And what we've seen, and we heard at the conference over and over, is that no one really has just one tool to do all their things. It's a mix and match of, as Steve was saying, up to 4 different things. And some people are building, and some people are buying, and some people are cobbling it together. But it's a challenge that everybody is trying to solve. Next big focus at the conference was education and training. Stacy Case.
Hi, everybody. Again, so great to see everybody. I know we just keep echoing this again and again, but it was great to see everybody at X. It's even better to see you here in this summit. I know a lot of people are on holidays, so it's lovely to see everybody and connect with you. So there are a couple of things that we did at X that we talked about. And if you want to go to the next slide, I'm happy to talk about those now. There's 2 new things that we are really proud to announce. And the one that was the first one to announce that's live and right now is FinOps persona training. So one of the things that we've talked about a lot with folks, especially those organizations that are in that run stage, are how we really need to start building out the organizational alignment, especially as you're maturing. And there's a lot of adjacent team members that need to understand the different concepts of FinOps, but they don't actually need to do FinOps. So traditionally what we'd had them do was take that FinOps certified practitioner training, which, listen, it's great. I love it. I'm a big fan of that training and that certification, but it's not necessary for everybody. So what we went ahead and did is created some adjacent trainings that are specific to personas that might be working with your FinOps team that need to understand what's that common language, what is that nomenclature that they need to understand to really connect, so you can spend less time educating them and more time collaborating and working. And that's where the persona training came in. There's the engineer, finance, leadership, procurement, and even product owner. I encourage all of you to take a look at that, share it with your teams, let them know that that's out there. So really you can just kind of build that organizational alignment and move forward without spending most of your time educating those adjacent team members and staff. In addition to that, the other thing that we're super excited to announce is going to be launching this fall. And I always have to preface this as it's not all figured out, just like everything that we announce in training. And we often are telling you the exciting news before we figured out all of the details. So the details will be here shortly, but we are going to start having enterprise subscriptions. And this is really exciting for us because subscriptions are really going to allow enterprises access to the entire FinOps Foundation training catalog. And this is going to include some of the content that's currently only found in Pro. And the reason that we're doing that is, again, it's going to allow these enterprises to provide the right education for the right person where they are in their career at that time and what they need to know. And it's going to allow you to build that training out from that 100 to 300 level training, so you're not over educating or under educating any one person. And plus you can start having these really detailed training plans going forward and see what that progress looks like. So we're very excited about that. It is going to be officially launched this fall. What we'll announce in the fall is the specific details like seats and pricing and stuff, but please keep an eye out for that, especially for you enterprises that are excited to see that. And yes, Allison, we actually have over 7,500 certified practitioners as of right now. So it's a huge accomplishment to all of you out there. So exciting stuff coming.
I don't know if you were tracking, Stacy, but you got more love in the chat than I think anybody else. Clearly you're the favorite.
It's because I'm loud and talk a lot. Thank you, everybody. Keep it up. So yeah, details TBD. We're excited about that too. Amit's question that would likely include some, seat or two, or we're working that out to Pro as well. So that's a big accelerant, but only a few folks in the organization typically need it. Great. With that, let's jump on over to the TAC panel led by Ashley Runko.
Thanks, JR. So our TAC, or Technical Advisory Council, is made up of practitioners, platforms, CSPs, government, and they're really our sounding board. We go to them a lot as staff for advice. They help us develop our best practices. Later on today, you're going to hear from a lot of working groups. The TAC is really that governing board of those best practice outputs. So I thought it only seemed right to kind of catch up with them on how they felt X went. And so today we're going to talk with a few of the members that were there in person. Want to go to the next slide, starting with Alee. She was a presenter at FinOps X, probably one of the most popular sessions. And I have to give her credit because she was at the end of the day as well. And the room was just maxed out. Michael did a deep dive on managing cloud cost data at scale. Sarah presented on day 2 keynote where she announced Google's optimization hub. I believe that's in beta. And then David's Adobe team, they came full force. They presented on the keynote and they also also did a breakout on visualization and automation. This Adobe is definitely one of those leading running FinOps organizations. So it was so great to have them there and present all of their insights. So today, let's get into the panel. Let's maybe start with Alee. Tell us about your experience at X.
Hey everyone, thanks for including me on this, Ashley and the FinOps community team. My experience was epic. I think that's the only word I can use to describe it at first. Being at X, it's just amazing to be able to connect, network, and learn from folks in the community. But I think the best part about it, and JR, I know you mentioned this, is the people. It really was welcome home. I think I left there so excited, re-energized to come back to my team and bring all those learnings back. And every day I keep checking on the YouTube for all the new videos coming out. So I know they're all coming out now. And I have my little short list of every single one I want my team to watch so that they can be part of the fun too and be part of the conversation, even though they weren't able to attend in person.
That's amazing. And Sarah, what did this mean for you and being able to come from the product side?
Well, I thought, one, it was super interesting to see the growth in the community. The message that we took back to a lot of folks within Google Cloud is FinOps is very much becoming mainstream. Just seeing the number of attendees grow was huge. And then what I thought was also super interesting, just hearing from some of the keynote speakers from various industries and how they're applying FinOps from looking at costs differently, not just dollars, but from a sustainability standpoint. The frequency at which folks are understanding and monitoring costs, like Walmart mentioned, on a daily basis. That's pretty incredible for an organization that large to have that permeated within the culture. And then also, I thought it was really, I think kudos to JR and the team for bringing 3 major cloud service providers on stage, all talking about how they are very keen on helping the community understand their costs and also helping the community optimize, right? And they talked, and from a product perspective as well, hearing the words virtuous cycle, that to me is very much key, right? Like we help the community understand and optimize their costs, and then they reinvest and they innovate, and so it's a win-win for both parties. And I think it was really nice to hear everybody aligned on that and working together. So yeah, it was super energizing for me and my team to be there, hear firsthand how our products are being used, and also get their challenges and their feature requests. So yeah, it was awesome.
That's amazing. How about you, David?
Yeah, it was such a great experience. I mean, I think we've been remote for so long that connecting with people face to face just was truly a pleasure. Seeing people that I hadn't seen in several years, and really learning kind of what was going on in the FinOps world for a lot of different companies that were unlike the ones that I've been at. So I've been at several since the initial CloudyCon that we had back in 2019. And so it was just so much fun to hear different perspectives from different industries and see where we were doing well and where we weren't. I kind of thought of this conference as a whole as like either validation or education. So it was either validation of what we were doing well at Adobe, or education on what we can do better. And so it was such a great conference and super energizing, especially meeting Tom Cruise. That was probably the best.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say this was perfect timing because we're just getting ready to start our roadmap planning. So being able to take these sessions back and then start to develop that. How about you, Michael?
Absolutely.
So unfortunately, I wasn't able to make last year. So this was my first X, but the experience was amazing. I love conferences, just being able to get to meet people and have those conversations. That's one of the most exciting things for me. And this was unique. Like I've been to a lot of Microsoft conferences, but this one was a lot different for me. It was like meeting long lost college friends for the first time in person. But I've been working with these people and even seeing them in working groups nearly every day. It was a very unique experience for me, I'd say. But, I have to say there's nothing better than this community that y'all have built. Everyone is so welcoming, engaging, easy to work with. And X was just a chance to finally meet them face to face, which was just wonderful. And I loved it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And then I want to kind of switch to the content. So, many of you may or may not know, the TAC is really responsible for a lot of the content that we put out with these working groups. We immediately came back from FinOps X and we're like, more 300. What does that look like? How do we put together playbooks? How do we put together a rubric for when we're doing call for proposals? So the TAC is going to be working a lot on that. If you have feedback on what 300 level content or more that you want to see, please share that with us. We want to adapt that for next year. So Sarah, maybe give us a couple takeaways from Keynote on day one.
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned that I thought the daily spend anecdote was really interesting. The other anecdote I thought was really key was that FinOps is the long game. And what we're seeing, obviously, from folks that were presenting their success stories is that it wasn't an overnight adventure. It wasn't a one and done. It was like, again, I think the word culture was mentioned like several times throughout all of the keynotes. And because building a culture is a long play. And then the idea that the FinOps practice is really at the center of it, but building that out, I think it was really interesting to hear from all of the folks that were talking from their various company perspectives. And I think the other very interesting note and theme amongst them all was obviously the buzz around focus being a game changer from the practitioners that are looking to, understand their CSP data across clouds, to tooling vendors, to even like the cloud service providers that we're talking about how, they're looking forward to, having customers be able to take just basic understanding of cloud costs off the table so they can continue to innovate. I think that was really neat to see, like at all levels, how everyone is really, really supportive of focus. I'm sure other folks have stuff to say about that, but yes.
Yeah, Michael, what was the specific session that really caught your attention and why?
Yeah, there were so many great sessions. There was no way to catch them all and also catch up with people in person, which I already mentioned I love so much. But so I'm still catching up with a lot of the sessions on YouTube, which is great to see those continually coming through. But if you're going to force me to pick one, I'd have to say it was the Intro to Focus session by Udam and Mike. I knew that focus was going to be a critical topic, but I was truly amazed to see how packed the room was with standing room only. And this definitely energized me so much and made me more excited than ever to be part of focus and for us to focus more on focus.
Yeah, we have an inside joke. How many times can we say focus in the right and the wrong context? So, Alee, you had a breakout. What advice would you give to people that are maybe thinking about speaking next year? Like, how do you get that ball rolling within your organization? And how was that experience?
I'd say first things first, do it. Even if you're uncomfortable, put yourself out of your comfort zone and do it. Don't be intimidated. I think one of the main things is floating topics around with your team and your peers. If it resonates with them, it'll resonate with the rest of the community, and challenge yourself to think beyond just some of the easy topics. Go for those 300 or those harder level topics. Probably most importantly, get early approval. Take this one seriously. Thank you, Ashley, for working with me on this one. But it takes a little bit longer to get them approved. So start working with your teams. And then most importantly, at the end, when you're doing your session, be yourself and be authentic.
Thank you so much. And David, you guys had quite a crew that came here. What were the type of personas that joined X?
Yeah, just specifically from Adobe, we had finance, program management, technical folks, and leadership. So, we had our cloud operations leader being like Rich, right? And he was on the keynote for Firefly. We had finance people that actually came last minute. We kind of plugged it for them and they were loving it. And so I think it again was great to see finance persona there from Adobe and helping them understand what it meant, what FinOps actually means versus what sometimes maybe they think it means. And then the engineering folks we had there as well, like seeing them actually talk to other engineers, other folks that really are building out automation, building out visualization, building out all of the great stuff that we're doing from a FinOps perspective. And then the program management side, just how you manage a FinOps program is getting more and more complex across the board, right? As more and more people adopt this, as more and more people get to that, hey, we use Cost Explorer, we use, other cost management tools. Great, like what's the next step, right? And seeing people kind of understand that this needs to be a programmatic approach to how we manage cloud spend and get value and extract value out of cloud. It was great to see all of those different people kind of coming from Adobe, and I think that kind of was across the board. I think there was a mix of practitioners that I don't think I've ever seen before at most places. So that was really exciting to see how many different types of folks there were. It wasn't just finance, it wasn't just program management, it wasn't just analysts, it wasn't just engineers. It was a group of so many different folks, which I think is really unusual for a lot of conferences. Many times it's like one group of people. So yeah, it was all over the place, especially with Adobe. And we brought a lot of people, so it was fun.
Yeah, I heard a couple of people say, like, with so much remote working, that they kind of made this like their team offsite. I mean, you can't really go for a team offsite. So that was really exciting to see. So book a couple
especially
days
San Diego, right? It's like can't go wrong with that. So.
Okay, one more question, being told to wrap up here. So jumping into the framework, TAC approves all the working group proposals and then reads through everything that's published. Today, we're going to hear from a lot of working groups. Alee, what are you most excited to hear launching today?
All of them, but to highlight a few, I think intersection of IT asset management and FinOps, just because that's one I'm newer to. Usage optimization, I'm always interested in another playbook and how you understand the personas. And then thirdly, commitment-based discounts. Anything to streamline and understand options across CSPs is always helpful. But again, all of them are going to be awesome.
Awesome. Okay, and I got told I could ask one more question. So, where does the TAC see the framework focusing next year, Sarah? You might have muted because I told you we we're going to do one more, but we are.
All right, so I think that we're going to look specifically at more level 300 talks for this FinOps X in general. Like, I think we want to definitely get to more technical sessions on best practices with applied examples so that folks can really walk away with stuff that they can do within their organizations. And I think the other area that we want to explore more is making sure that we have breakout topics that cover maybe other areas that, are actually very much described in depth in the FinOps book, but, like sustainability or accessibility or even UX, those topics we'd like to see some more content on as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being on this panel. Keep challenging us staff, and we look forward to next year. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
Turn back over to you, sir.
Oh, so there were some questions around the Techlo Advisory Council. It's a set size, and there are elections that run on regular cadences. We just had them, but the work of the TAC is open. Anybody can attend the meetings. They just can't vote, and kind of ask the folks who aren't the voting members to stay on mute or in the chat. But the group, has a broader remit, right, of looking at how the framework should work, how the definitions of FinOps are, how capabilities adjust. There's conversations in there about, as Sarah was alluding to, like which capabilities should be highlighted or which things should become capabilities that aren't currently. So they're very much, the group that is ensuring by that mix of cloud plus practitioner plus consultant, which is baked into it to get all the voices, that we're all swimming in the right direction together. Well, thank you, TAC panelists. Yeah, really great to see all of you. And next up, we are going to hear from Rahul from CloudFix. CloudFix is one of our newer premier vendor member partners. These are folks who also support the community and join very much with a strong code of conduct that we don't want sales pitches, but we want them to come in and share their knowledge about the space. We found, as we saw at FinOps X, there's so many experts at these organizations that have been doing work with their customers, but also there's so much movement, right? We've seen practitioners become consultants, who become vendors, who go to clouds, who go back to practitioners. And it's really great to get all these folks in. Rahul leads the organization there and is going to talk a bit about usage statistics. Rahul.
Thanks, JR. Hi, everyone. I'm Rahul Subramaniam. I'm the founder and CEO of CloudFix, but I also wear another hat, which is CTO of ESW Capital, where we manage 40,000 AWS accounts of our own. Now, a lot of the material and data that I'm going to present today is from having analyzed over $1 billion of AWS spend, and the data is very AWS specific, but I imagine that the patterns kind of translate to the other CSPs as well. So if you can get started with the next slide, here's a very interesting stat. And when I got this, I was quite shocked. I knew it was bad, but I didn't think it was this bad. So across AWS, the total EC2 utilization is only about 6%. And what we've also discovered is that when it comes to enterprise workloads, it can be as low as 2%. And in fact, a vast majority of this underutilization is actually caused by non-production workloads. The production workloads are actually operating at much more efficient levels. And this is not even to mention a lot of waste that also happens in the fact that the vast majority of instances are still running on the older architectures and the older processors. And unlike your traditional infrastructure cost models, in a cloud provider like AWS, you actually find that the latest and greatest EC2 instances actually are the cheaper ones to use. So the fact that there's tons of waste, along with the fact that the instances are not modernized to leverage the cheaper cost and higher performance, is a little bit of a shocker of a stat. Okay, if you can move on to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about storage. I've spoken about this earlier, and it's kind of public knowledge as well. But it's still shocking that over 90% of objects that get put onto S3 are accessed exactly once. And yet the vast majority of S3 billing happens to be on standard access tier, where you pay full price to get sub-millisecond latencies to access those objects when you're never going to access them again. And again, it's important to remember that in a store like S3, there are already tens of trillions of objects that are stored over there. So the scale of this is pretty massive. And if you use something as simple as S3 intelligent tiering, where all the hard work is done for you, all you have to do is turn it on, you could save anywhere from 30 to 90% on your S3 storage costs. But unfortunately, we don't see any of that acted on. If you can move on to the next slide. Great. Networking. Here's another one that surprised us a little bit when we came across this, which is that a lot of organizations start with the default networking for all of their accounts and their VPCs and so on. And you find that the default cost that is associated with those basic settings is about 300x, because invariably you end up using services like S3 or DynamoDB or one of the other managed services where all of your network traffic moves over the internet instead of moving through simple things like VPC endpoints. And that causes tons of additional cost and waste. And it's just surprising how much waste there is in just those very simple networking configurations. If you can move on to the next one. Yeah, this one is slightly different from the pattern. We found that even though I've specifically talked about Aurora databases, in general, the pattern that we are noticing is that a large number of AWS customers end up managing their own databases or non-cloud native databases. And for some reason, imagine that that's less wasteful or that's more efficient. Managed cloud native services in the long run actually end up being more cost efficient for everything from better performance to having more read replicas, more read endpoints where you can actually shard and scale better. There are faster failovers. And overall, the costs in the long run, when you account for downtimes and the cost of patching and managing these instances, is significantly lower. So there's tons of waste that's kind of just sitting on the table, but not really acted on. My biggest takeaway from all of this is that every time I've spoken to people, I don't think there's anyone that disagrees that there is waste in this field and in this area, and that this is real money that's being left on the table. But again, every month when I look at all of these statistics, I don't see that much of the needle moving to improve these significantly. You do see some change, but you don't. And I can't help but compare what's happening over here to what I have seen for decades on technical debt as it relates to code. So here are a few tips that I want to share with all of you. If you feel like you're part of the FinOps practice in your organization, you don't feel like the culture is there yet across your entire organization, and you don't feel like leadership or anyone else that you're counting on to set priorities has done that yet. So here are simple tips that I can share with you that I have found success with personally. The first one is chargeback. It's something that I've borrowed from some amazing folks on my finance team. My finance team has actually used chargebacks for all kinds of different aspects of our operations to align the rest of the organization towards better behavior or towards the behavior that is right for the organization. Now, the way we use chargeback in the FinOps world is that for behavior that we wanted, say we wanted people to use a centralized database or to use a centralized managed service, we would subsidize it or literally make it free for them to use it. And then we would use chargeback. We'd say, hey, you want to use your own database, you want to use your own managed service, you want to use your own hosted setup, go ahead and use it. But you would end up paying 2x, 3x, 5x, whatever we wanted the penalty to be. We would use that as a mechanism to induce or influence the right behavior. And we found that immediately everyone from business to leadership got aligned very quickly on what the priority should be. You can actually use the costing or the pricing for your centralized service or what you want people to move to. You can influence that very, very easily with chargeback. So use that as a tool. You can set prices every quarter for a new behavior that you want. And at the end of the quarter, reevaluate whether you need to reset it and make changes for a new behavior that you want. So chargebacks are a very, very neat tool. And not to mention, it also is a very important FinOps capability. If you can go on to the next one, you also need to empower your teams with automation so that they can actually, once they realize that, okay, they have to take action, that action is nothing but a compelling event. Now, you find that even with technical debt, people don't make changes unless there's a compelling event. And with chargebacks, you can create that compelling event for your teams. But you also need to enable them with automation and tools that will allow them to execute quickly without stifling that pace of change. So automation is very, very key to enabling that at any scale. So make sure that you have that available. And then the third piece of advice that I have is repeat this nonstop. As you've heard everyone say, FinOps is a nonstop practice. It really is. This is something that you have to just keep continuing over and over and over again. And you shouldn't feel isolated. You shouldn't feel like you are powerless within your organization, even if leadership is not aligned or even if the rest of the organization doesn't yet have the culture. You can build that culture. You can be the force that drives it. So those are a few tips. I also do, if you can just go on the next slide, JR, just for all of you, I do a podcast called AWS Insiders where we have a lot of AWS customers as well as folks from AWS who come in and share all the best practices and their experiences with moving workloads to the cloud and running them in the cloud. And we share our experiences together with them. And I also run a live stream called AWS Made Easy with my colleague, Stephen Barr, where we bring in guests from AWS who help AWS customers and practitioners get more efficient with using AWS services as well as the costs associated with them. So please connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions or if you just want a discussion or come and attend any of these other forums. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rahul. And yeah, thanks for being such an active board member. And yeah, big +1 to his podcast. He had Joe and I on it last year, and Rahul's a wealth of information, both as a leader there and then all the work they do managing their own spend, I understand as well. So great. Thank you, Rahul. So with that, we are going to get into a working group showcase, do an overview of what we're going to cover, and want to give a shout out in this case to Samantha White, who leads the working groups, joined us not very long ago and has really accelerated this program into being a well-oiled machine with lots of simultaneous 16 working groups going at once. So Sam, great work there and looking forward to hearing about all these.
Thanks, JR. Yeah, I think I'm coming up on my year mark with the FinOps Foundation. Certainly happy to be back here at Summit today with you all to talk about working groups. So what are they, right? They're collections of individuals, from our community who are getting together on a weekly basis, usually to produce open source content for the rest of the community. They're producing a variety of outputs from papers and guides, utilities, podcast episodes, and more. I think we'll talk about that a bit later on. But all of our working groups are focused on a particular FinOps capability, a particular FinOps challenge, which is featured in the working group name. I think working groups so far have produced over 30 outputs to date, and we have more than 16 active today. So I'll tell you a little bit about where you can find more information on working groups, and that is on our working groups overview page. If you visit that, you can check on what's going on. So atop the page is a little blurb about working groups and a link to our FAQ page. It also includes the option, to send us any ideas that you have for new working groups. But if you keep scrolling down that page, I think next couple slides, JR. Yeah, there you go. You're able to see a listing of our upcoming working groups, those that are proposed, which means they might be coming up active soon, those that are currently active as well. They're in this sort of card format, which will display the name, a short description of the working group, as well as any working group which is open for new joiners will have this green join group button. And then below our active working groups even is a listing of all the completed working group outputs. So those 30 or so that I mentioned are all listed at the bottom of the page. So if you're interested in joining working groups, this is your place to go to see what's active, and go ahead and click that green join button. I did want to highlight our newest set of working groups. It's a set of 4 here. They're the focus conversion working groups. Udam briefly touched on these earlier. They are separate from participating in the focus project. So joining a focus conversion working group does not require the signing of a CLA, but the goal of these working groups will be to create materials for practitioners and organizations to convert the billing data that they receive from their cloud services provider to being compliant with focus version 1.0. And the reason that there are 4 working groups is because each of these are scoped to a particular cloud service provider. So one for AWS, Azure, GCP, and Oracle. So if you're interested, go ahead to visit that overview page and submit your request to join. But maybe joining working groups isn't for you, but you want to contribute to working groups in some form or fashion. And so I have an opportunity here for folks to do that if you're interested. We have 2 working groups which are building out user story libraries for their subject of focus. And the idea here really is to share experiences that folks have had when tackling FinOps challenges. So that way other members of the community can benefit from learning about, the successes or failures of other people. So if you're keen on sharing your experiences, these working groups would really appreciate it if you would share your story. We're dropping a couple links into chat for you to fill out those forms to submit your stories on either your cost allocation or unit economics journey. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're curious as to what these user story library looks like, you can also take a peek at the gamification user story library, which was published earlier this year. So we'll drop that into chat for you here shortly as well. I did want to take a moment, to talk about these asset types with you all. When you're on our website searching for working group outputs or any resources even, we want to make sure that you folks have some sort of understanding about the content you're about to open up. And therefore, staff has been working to classify our resources by type and then making that type visible to you all in your search results. So I'll briefly talk about what these working group asset types are. So first up would be utilities. An example of this might be a code sample or any sort of interactive content aimed at helping you to solve your FinOps challenges. Stories, which we just talked about a bit, right, are those real world experiences of your FinOps peers. Guides are going to be the ones that are going to describe implementations of FinOps capabilities or activities. And then papers will be providing those deep insights into topics and recommended best practices. But one of our newest asset types is playbooks, which is why I kind of have it featured over here to the right. These are the ones which are going to provide prescriptive step-by-step guidance on how to do a thing, right? You name the thing. And today we're going to hear from a handful of working groups on what they've recently released, be it a paper or a guide, and their plans for the future. Many of them are planning to publish playbooks in upcoming sprints, and they'll tell us about that shortly. But we really wanted to hear from you, the community, on what kind of playbooks would be helpful for you and your organizations to accelerate adoption. So we're going to be using Menti here to collect some of your feedback. So if you could kindly, go over to menti.com, use this code, scan the QR code, and share your thoughts on what would be helpful to see as a feature subject for a playbook. We'd really appreciate it. We'll take it back to our active working groups and also compare it to our working groups in the pipeline in our backlog, and see if we can't get some of that good content back out to you folks. So tell us, what do you want to know about? What would be helpful to you and your organization? But that's really all I wanted to check in with you folks on today. We'll try to show the results of that Menti a little bit later on, but I did want to pass things on over to Taylor, who's a representative from our KPI working group, and is going to give us one of our first updates.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it. And yeah, Sam has been awesome. Such a great resource for us as we built out this KPIs working group. So, hey, everyone, I'm Taylor, and I've been leading the KPIs working group alongside Laura Mills. As many folks on this call have echoed, it was awesome meeting so many of you guys at FinOps X. It was such a great conference, and the foundation, all of you guys that work in there, you did such a great job putting that on. It was like a well-oiled machine, and I really appreciated it. So this KPIs working group really came about because a lot of folks that either were new to the FinOps Foundation, new to FinOps in general, or even further along in their journey, were coming to the foundation looking for resources to help them find ways to quantitatively measure the effectiveness and progress of their FinOps practice. As JR mentioned, and it was one of the themes of FinOps X, right? FinOps is a team sport that needs to be played and spread throughout the organization. And quantitative measures is one of the best ways to, communicate the needs and the progress of your practice. KPIs as a topic is kind of sprinkled throughout the foundation's content. Different working groups have touched on KPIs, but there's never really been a dedicated effort specifically on KPIs, how to find them, how to track them, but that's changing with us. We've got an awesome group of folks who've done a really great job identifying and prioritizing a couple dozen KPIs from across the capabilities, but we're really just getting started, and we're looking for volunteers to help join us for our next sprint, where we're going to be publishing cards, as Sam mentioned, and playbooks. They're going to help the community not only to understand and know what these KPIs are and what organizations typically use, but also how to implement them, find where the data is, what's the formula, how do you get this thing out to the different members in your organization. So if you're interested in this topic, please join us. That would be great. Feel free to reach out. And while I have your attention here, I'm going to go off script and say, if you're in the Washington, D.C. area and you want to meet up, we have a meetup on September 20th. Please join us. If you're in the D.C. area, reach out to me and I'll shoot you the link on how to register. Sorry, Sam, had to put my plug there. Thanks, everyone.
Not a worry, Taylor. Thanks. A great mention for those who are in the DC area to definitely attend that event. I do want to thank you for your efforts here, as well as the rest of the crew. JR, I think I've got some faces in here in the next couple slides I'd like to call out. Give a big thanks to this KPI crew. They've dedicated a lot of time and effort so far, and really looking forward to seeing the results of Sprint 1 and where the group goes from there. I think next up, we get to hear from the Commitment-Based Discounts Working Group.
All right. Hey, y'all. My name's Andrew. I am a co-lead for the Commitment-Based Discount Working Group. My other co-lead is Kate. I'm sure she's somewhere in the Zoom.
Here.
Awesome. Fantastic. We can hop over to the next slide, just talk about what our group did. We are a new group. We just wrapped up our first sprint, put together 3 deliverables, and we're already ramping up to our second one. Our goal was to, we can hop to the next slide. I don't know if my Zoom's lagging a bit. Our goal was to enable knowledge sharing in this incredibly context-dependent area. I think we all are aware the strategies and the tactics that we employ in this particular to handle commitment-based discounts are super organization dependent. It really depends on where you sit, who you know. And through this working group, the community was not only able to distill best practices for organizations at all kinds of maturity levels, but we're also creating a funnel for new practitioners who don't quite know that they're practitioners yet, and they're really just like stepping into the ring here. I think spend-based commitments, as we'll touch on in a lot of our content, is a big funnel that creates a lot of new practitioners as they're just kind of stepping into rate optimization broadly. Our first sprint, we had 3 deliverables. We updated the FinOps terminology glossary with a lot of content that we deemed was important for practitioners to be aware of. We also wrote a comprehensive introductory white paper, and we created an offering matrix to give practitioners a glance of the landscape, just as a easy way to understand sort of all of the offerings that are available publicly, at least. So this is an example of some of the terms we defined as part of our first sprint. There's a lot of discussion here about how to bring awareness to concepts that a lot of us in the group had to discover the hard way. So, many of these things we, discovered through endless cycles of iterations with our stakeholders, or, maybe we made a couple mistakes and they had to correct them along the way. You don't know what you don't know, or at least, until a working group puts it in a glossary for you. And here I'll hand off to Kate so she can walk you all through our other 2 deliverables.
Thanks, Andrew. So we're also really excited to announce the launch of our white paper, as Andrew referenced. And this is chock full of a ton of useful information. And one of my favorite aspects about this white paper is actually that we try to make it as vendor neutral as possible for the whole body of the paper. We actually have a vendor nuances section at the very end to help sort of provide some context for the different vendors if you're looking to start in AWS or Azure or Google and what that looks like. And as Andrew also referenced earlier, we try to put in some questions or things to think about as you start to build your commitment-based discount program at an organization. So whether that's who do you involve? Is it products, engineering, CIOs, all of the above? What does that look like? How do you engage finance, and how does this impact other FinOps activities like chargeback or showback? How do you show savings? How do you make sure engineers can't go out and buy $100,000 in reservations one day because they want to save money, right? But also on top of that, what's the appetite for risk? How frequently should you be buying these commitment-based discounts? And how are you going to get the funding? So there's a ton of information here. We didn't even cover all of it. We also have some KPIs. So hopefully Taylor will make those better during their sprint, but we do have a draft in there. And leading back to the vendor nuances, on the next slide, we also have a comparison matrix, which I think is really cool. So what we have here is for each of the 3 main cloud vendors for a set of characteristics, you could say on the left-hand side, like the services covered, the scope, the geography, what do you do if it's going unused, right? For each of them, you can compare and see for an AWS standard reservation versus savings plan versus an Azure reservation versus a Google CUD, right? So you can sort of see at a glance, how do these all compare? And I know I'm newer to some commitment-based discounts in some of these vendors, so it's really helpful to sort of compare apples to apples rather than doing a lot of Googling by myself. So we're really excited to launch this. And now, as we wrap up our first sprint and lead into our next sprint, on the next slide, we're really excited to talk about what comes next. Sam referenced earlier about the playbook. So we're currently working on creating a playbook. On the next slide, JR, if possible. We're currently working on creating a playbook. And Andrew, I don't know if you want to touch on that. Looks like you might have gotten muted.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah, we're writing up a playbook, one of potentially multiple. Our intention here in Sprint 2 is to continue the track that we start with a sort of broad introductory level, and we're working our way through up the maturity levels as well as the complexity. We'll start with the playbook just to kind of bring everyone's understanding to the same playing field, and from there we're really going to go crazy, bringing up complex tools, automation strategies, and assuming that everyone sort of got the base education that we will work into our first playbook. Our second playbook after the first one will continue building on top of that knowledge to really fine tune all of the best practices to kind of show a best in class commitment-based discount strategy.
And then I just want to check in with you guys as you're working through this. What were some challenges that you were facing building that matrix?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. The main challenge there, as I think will show is a theme throughout this kind of entire working group, is the scope of commitment-based discounts is a large one. Not just across CSPs, but even within one CSP, there is a breadth of offerings that you could choose, and the tactics will vary widely depending on your own workload and usage sort of behavior. The main challenge was to kind of decide on what the right level of granularity was to start with, to kind of bring practitioners to an even playing field, make sure that we all understand, broadly what is available, what is possible, kind of the underlying principles of employing commitment-based discounts. And then from there, saving all of the really fun stuff, or, for the rest of us billing geeks, the really interesting things for playbooks and for future playbooks even to really get into the details.
And Kate, were there any disagreements on choosing what type of categories to present in the matrix?
I don't know if I would say disagreement. I think I would phrase it as healthy discussion and debate amongst the working group, especially as you go from vendor to vendor and try to sort of normalize that at a high level. But there are definitely some meetings where we were just trying to figure out what makes sense, right? At what level do we put this in, like Andrew was talking about? And also, how do we standardize, right? Like if we're trying to figure out, say for the matrix, right, we need values for each of the cloud vendors. And sometimes that wasn't always easy to find, or we couldn't get that expertise in there, so we had to take something out, even though someone really wanted it for that one vendor. So I say healthy debate was had probably most sessions, which is great because that's how you learn, right? Like that, I learned a lot just through those discussions, so really valuable.
Yeah, the outbox is really good. I was thinking back to the early days of the foundation. It feels like we talked about this topic a lot, and then we haven't for a while. And so it's nice to see it coming back, and all of everything that the cloud providers have done in this space too. And so you guys putting together a document is phenomenal. So be starting Sprint 2, Sam. Do you want to give us a shout out to the contributors?
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, both by yourselves, Andrew and Kate, but also the rest of the working group. So thank you all for your efforts. I think next up, we're going to hear from our ITAM and FinOps intersection working group.
Make sure we can get Solomon off mute here.
I'm off mute.
Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, thank you guys. And thank you, Sam and Ashley, for the opportunity. If you're wondering about the accent, guys, I'm from South Africa. And I'm co-leading the ITAM and FinOps working group with Amy Ashby, our resident FinOps ninja, and really wonderful administrator. I just want to take a moment before I go on to say thank you also to the team, right? We've been working with some of the best minds in ITAM and FinOps in the world. And I think, thank you guys. It really, I've learned a lot from you. And I think, just thank you for all of the great work that you've done. All right. But let's recap a little bit of where we are and what Amy has presented in May this year at the May Summit. We presented on the working group, on the Sprint 1 of the working group before. And what we did in Sprint 1 is really to explore the benefits of ITAM and FinOps possibly working together. So we wanted to try and understand what is ITAM, what is FinOps, and what would it like if the two of them are working together. We created a FinOps persona, and we really just wanted to define what is this IT asset management thing, and is it possible that there could be some similarities between ITAM and FinOps. And we found that there's profound similarities, and we believe that if the two work together, there could actually be amazing benefits to the organization. Now, in this sprint, we wanted to use the baseline that we led in Sprint 1 to try and understand the intersections of ITAM and FinOps, but at a deeper level. We wanted to understand exactly from a detailed level, what would those activities look like from a FinOps and IT side, and also what we wanted to understand what the outcomes would be if the two work together. So what we did was we actually took the FinOps activities, we took the ITAM activities, and we went through every single capability of FinOps, and we tried to define in all of those spheres what each are looking like and what does it look like if we work together. This is also available and published, so please do have a look at it for us. Next slide, please, sir. Now, as a byproduct of the work that we've done, we've now updated some of the capability, some of the FinOps capabilities. Now, this wasn't our goal. Our goal was really just to find where's those intersections and how can we actually bring value to the organization by collaborating on some of the FinOps capabilities. But while we were doing that, we also managed to update some of the FinOps practitioner activities. And these are also published for you to actually just review. Next slide, please, Sam. Okay, but let's do some key takeaways of what it is that we found when evaluating the different capabilities and activities in the FinOps capability matrix. And what we have found is that ITAM and FinOps are really incredibly similar. FinOps is obviously looking at the cloud and at cost optimization in the cloud, cost allocation in the cloud, and the goal is optimization of resources, etc. And the same is the same is true for ITAM. But ITAM's main focus in that is actually just on-premise licenses and software as a service, and it's not looking at cloud cost. Now, you may wonder, where does these two actually fit? But because they have such close responsibilities and goals, there's many opportunities for the two to actually work together to create value for the business, and we'll come to that a little bit later. Also, from a tool point of view, IT asset management has specialized tools in most of the mature organizations, and these specialized tools can do inventory, discovery. It can do budget management. It does forecasting, and all of those things then is something that the FinOps team could also potentially leverage. In many cases, those specialized ITAM tools also inventory the cloud and licenses in the cloud. And again, that is just something that the FinOps a FinOps practitioner may use to actually enhance his own data sets. Of course, if we look at networks, they are also using the same networks and stakeholders. The finance stakeholders for ITAM are the exact finance stakeholders for FinOps. It's similar to the vendors. It's similar to in many cases, to the IT architecture teams, etc. So there's many opportunities for us to actually work together with those stakeholders to actually create a better part of a whole instead of the smaller pieces. And then I think one of the main things that's very important to me, the main areas of overlap is related to bring your own license and software as a service, but specifically related to the on-premise licensing. Now, I don't know how many of you are using Bring Your Own License, but if you haven't as yet, and if you're not convinced about Bring Your Own License, I'm going to really try and convince you today. Because remember, IT asset management and software asset management has purchased licenses for the on-premise installations of the workloads for a long time. Now, when you are moving and when you are scoping your workload into the cloud, it would just make sense to potentially use the unused licenses that is already there in the IT asset space. Think about Oracle RDS, for instance. If you have excess licenses on Oracle, then why would you actually go and subscribe to Oracle licenses in the cloud? most likely, and this is obviously an exercise that you and that ITAM always does, is to make sure that the business case prevails, and to make sure that actually when you are using those in the cloud, that it is, that the business case is sound. But because you've already invested throughout many years in these on-premise software licenses, there's a big business case for them to potentially just be reutilized in the cloud. Also, if you look at potentially some of the vendors that has instituted specific programs to convince people to move their workloads into the cloud. Now, I'm thinking about Microsoft Azure Hybrid Benefits, etc. Microsoft has a program that actually allows you to use licenses on-premise and in the cloud based on the traditional on-premise licensing. So why would you not want to actually utilize those licenses and save money and thereby actually reduce your rates? So all of that for me is a big win, and it will be a win to ITAM as well, because those licenses, remember, have been purchased many years ago. Oftentimes we have excess. No company wants to have excess and waste in their traditional license stack either, right? So the cloud actually utilizing those licenses will create a win-win situation on both sides. Just on the purchasing, and sorry, Sam, if you just want to quickly go to the purchasing slide for me.
So we do have to kind of move forward to Q&A right now too. So I want to maybe leave you with one question.
Apologies.
No, thank you so much. Everyone, please check out the output. It's a really big deep dive into each capability, what ITAM persona and FinOps persona and how they can intersect. I did want to ask you something. This is phenomenal discussions. Every time I come to these working groups, I constantly learn new things. I want to ask you, we've seen like a significant shift kind of in licensing to be a little bit more usage-based versus unit-based. Do you think that's going to accelerate the deeper collaboration between FinOps and ITAM?
Absolutely, right? Because even although it may be a usage-based license, it is still a license with all kinds of metrics and things that you would need to understand. Now, those things are sometimes specialized, and it's something that would be important for ITAM to actually assist with, right? Because there can still be a lot of wastage in the cloud. So that, and there's also a real business case to be made for unit-based licensing, as I was explaining earlier.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing that update. I know that, this working group is really a remarkable one in the sense that you guys are pretty productive. You've put out several outputs this year and maintained really strong quality throughout. So thank you all for your efforts on this front. I think next up, we're going to hear from our usage optimization working group.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Robbins. So first off, just thank you to the foundation and Sam and the other staff. I know y'all work really hard to keep all these things going and keep us on track. So appreciate all the work you do and your flooded schedules. But really, I'm co-leading this work group with Julie, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of this. And my favorite thing really about working groups is just the knowledge sharing, the collaboration. So today I'm excited to share kind of what our group's been working on. And then if you're not a part of a group, as others have mentioned as well, I highly encourage you to become active in at least one. But for our initial sprint, our main focus was to define a usage optimization process that kind of worked across all the CSPs or cloud service providers. So we understand, cloud optimization sometimes can be overwhelming. So our mission was to help simplify it for everyone. And as a part of this working group, the ultimate goal is to empower you to be able to take the actions and lead that to the benefits of the well-optimized cloud that we always hear about. So it's not just knowing about what to do, but actually being able to take those steps and knowing who to involve to really make the difference in maximizing your business value. So, let's just talk real quick about optimization. It can be seen not only as a way to reduce cost, but also identify cost avoidance opportunities, right sizing, cleanup activities, policy enforcement. Those are all actions we take to achieve these goals. And along, that whole process, savings is something that comes up over and over. And so, Alee Whitman did share about Disney, how how to use those terms at FinOps X. So I did watch it the other day, and it was a unique perspective on the word savings. So if you've not seen it, or you want to watch it again, I think they're going to post a link in the chat here. So, but when our group was forming, we also discussed these terms, but trying to relate that to a working group name. So initially, our working group was proposed as the cost optimization working group. However, as we were refining the proposal, and we realized we wanted to target usage optimization versus both usage and rate optimization. So therefore, we updated our name to kind of better reflect that specialized focus. And we will have a breakout session at the end of the day summit. So I want to go ahead and invite you to join us if you can, so we can dive a little deeper into the topic of optimization and what it results in, and so we can have a good, insightful discussion there. So hope to see you on that. As mentioned earlier, though, we'll talk about our Sprint 1 results, the paper. So that was, our initial focus on just something very generic, versatile optimization process that you can use across the board. So a link to our paper is posted in the chat, and that contains, the list of tools, resources that are needed to execute it. We have included a list of personas to, who to involve in that process, streamline your connections, hopefully to reduce the time to get the right people on board. I know it's kind of sad to say, but there's been times, it's taken us weeks, and I think one time even 3 months to get all the right people onto a call so that we could, have meaningful conversations to make decisions. So this paper also gives you some insights for optimization initiatives. We included a flow chart to help facilitate your journey, information on exceptions to the rules, right? Because all rules have an exception. And as we included some key considerations you want to keep in mind, things like comparing savings versus the effort required to achieve savings. So if the savings is not that great, right? Like, why dedicate so much time to get those savings? Comparing the risks versus the gains of the recommended actions, resource availability to perform the required actions. So we hope that, we provided you a comprehensive guide to support you every step of the way. So moving ahead to Sprint 2, our primary objective is to enhance the information that's on the waste reduction opportunities page. And we want to list more optimization opportunities, but also back them with the playbooks that we've been talking about, which will describe exactly how to execute those opportunities with the tools that are provided from your CSPs. So presenting our progress so far, just like on a single slide here, we've defined our goals, loosely outlined our plans for our initial 3 sprints. Again, Sprint 1 is now available to you for that generic process. But if you're eager to learn more, there's a chat that's going to be posted, a link for our Slack. Join that. Also, if you share our passion for usage optimization and you're able to contribute examples and share your knowledge as well, we invite you to join our working group. Simply just reach out to the email listed here. We are in transition, so we'll be accepting people. It may show some, it's not open yet, but it will be open here soon.
Hey, Brian, thanks for that update. It's great to see the start you guys have got off to here with Sprint 1. Certainly looking forward to future sprints and those detailed playbooks. So thanks to you and the rest of the crew here. I think next up, we're going to hear from our internships working group.
Hi, Sam. Thanks a lot for the intro. And yeah, so I'm Tarinya. I'm a working group contributor and saying hello from all the way from Sri Lanka. So this is our Sprint 2 output, and the main objective was to create a ramp-up guide for the FinOps manager to cohesive a good program that aligns with the overall company's FinOps objectives. So from our previous interviews with the managers, we gathered that it is critical to build a perfect or like a good FinOps talent pipeline. And we also understand for an intern, for this program will actually help them to get a good real world experience, and as well as it's a discovery for their career as well, because the interns will be working with multifaceted tools, they're exposed to like great new technologies, and also working in a FinOps team, you will be liaising across multiple team members across the organization. So moving forward on to the next slide. So this is our output. It's rather comprehensive document. So big shout out for the entire crew and also Ashley to help structure this. So this is a 11-step guide. So we take you through step-by-step process to speed up the intern onboarding process itself. So they ensure that the intern has a proper training, a project which expands on the FinOps objective, and also give a continuous feedback and a good, great final evaluation. So moving on to the next slide, we have JR, if you can move. Yeah. So we understand like the internship can be from a summer or a graduate or even an MBA, and the candidate you're picking can even have can be an unconventional background, not like a typical IT engineer or even a finance. So we thought it will be great to have a well-rounded exposure from business to finance and to a cloud training as well. So moving on to the next slide. So we came up with like a set of ideas for projects covering the capabilities to bring out cost visibility, to also to build the FinOps culture. So the document goes on to brief like how the evaluation process has to be done from the project to the program itself, while highlighting the criteria to assess the candidate based on their past experience, the different educational background they are from. So you can also check the job board to get an idea on how to craft a JD for this program. So this is an overall nutshell on how we created the document. So please do share your feedback and also consider hiring an intern and posting it onto jobs.finops.org. And if you had any other previous experience being an intern, do submit your project to the intern repository as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for that update. I can really see how these materials here will help managers who are hiring and onboarding interns. Great stuff. So thank you to this whole crew here who made it possible. I think next up, we're going to hear from our Anomalies working group.
Hello everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Sam. So my name is Angel. I'm leading this working group. And to summarize very briefly what this working group is about, it's really to offer guidance on anomaly detection and management. And the Sprint 2 objective was to interact on the previous deliverables of Sprint 1, which was a guide. And what the group detected is that there were many things that we could improve on that, right? So much information that we just left it on the side that we should incorporate in the newer version. So this is we provided more detail about personas on maturity levels, and also taking the example of the life cycle that we have produced on the first sprint. We decided that the second sprint objective was to provide more samples based on the maturity. So if we move to the next slide, we have the results of what we have produced this sprint. So the first one is that, as I mentioned, we updated our guide that is now published, as you can see in the picture. And now the guide will contain the life cycle examples based on maturity. So there are the 3 maturity levels represented: the crawl, walk, and run. And what is different and what the teams needs to improve to step up from one maturity to the other. And these kind of things now are represented in the guide. We also brief. Regarding tooling, this is not just a pointing on specific solutions. We wanted just to explain what is the difference between building the own tool in-house, buying a third party, or use the CSP cloud native functionalities. We also have detail on the responsibility matrix, now based more on persona at the lifecycle step. And the last point regarding the guide was we have done some pointing, we have detected what are the points that we wanted to interconnect with the other capabilities, such as a chargeback or budgeting. So other capabilities that might interact with anomalies and might depend also on anomalies. And just to refer as well, we had Keith and Victoria for this working group that have participated in the FinOps podcast on the episode 29. So I recommend all of you to go there and listen to this good discussion. So now on the next slide. Okay, so regarding next steps, so we have completed sprint 2. As I explained, we are just starting sprint 3. For this sprint, what we are aiming to focus on something different. So we already have produced some content based on our experience and and our views about anomalies. But now we want to listen from the other people, from the rest of the community, about their own stories, how they did manage certain issues, and so on. Because this will not just help all the other practitioners in finding how to solve some issues and problems they are facing right now, but will also be used to validate some of the initiatives that we described in the guides. So we want just to validate that what we have written is being applied in the ground and does apply in the real world. So please feel free to join our chat Anomalies for any question or anything that you would like to discuss regarding anomalies. And if you want to be participating on the working group, feel free to email on the list, email shown before.
Thank you for this update. And thank you to this whole crew shown here who's put in a lot of time and effort. Really love that you guys have expanded upon your first work by deepening kind of the content in that guide, and really looking forward to seeing what comes out of your third sprint, those user stories. I think next up, we're going to hear from our Architecting for Cost Efficiency working group. So welcome, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everyone. This is Sangeeta from India, working as FinOps practitioner for KPMG Audit Tech. I'm super excited to introduce about Architecting for Cost Efficiency, the working group that I've been co-leading since few months now. And my other co-lead is Amit Doshi. Okay, firstly, let's take a quick look on what is this working group about and why this guide is important for the community. Architecting for Cost Efficiency is about incorporating FinOps practices during the application design phase in order to ensure that cost considerations are an integral part of the development process. So this working group aims to provide guidelines to design a product in a most cost-efficient manner. The guideline will help to maximize business value of cloud right from design phase of an application. It helps organizations to proactively identify and address potential cost inefficiencies and better align with business goals by implementing FinOps at earlier stage of development lifecycle. The guideline will also help individuals to make effective and responsible cost-related architectural decisions. Can we move to the next slide, Sam? Yeah, in Sprint 1, our working group mainly focused on designing virtual machine-based applications for cost efficiency. We have highlighted the significance of addressing costs during architecture phase. Our working group has also drawn attention to application and infrastructure layer considerations in terms of compute, storage, networking, operating system, operational requirements, and so on. We have also emphasized on inputs for architectural decision-making, how the strategic and tactical decisions made during design phase can impact cloud application lifecycle cost. The document focuses on what those decisions are, the factors driving those decisions, including application requirements, organizational factors, and capabilities of the chosen cloud service provider. The document then highlights the personas of those making these decisions. I strongly hope that this guide will prove instrumental in aiding organizations to initiate the FinOps implementation from the earliest stage of application design, ensuring that products are crafted with utmost cost efficiency in mind. We are currently working on designing database applications for cost efficiency. We may extend this exercise for containers, storage, and serverless applications in future sprints. This working group is currently active, and we encourage you all to share new insights, feedback, and suggestions as you engage with the guide. Our working group warmly invites you to participate in the discussion within our Slack channel as we collectively explore innovative approaches to integrate FinOps at the earlier stage and design a product in most cost-efficient manner. Yeah, thanks to all the contributors that you see on the screen whose invaluable contributions have made this guide possible.
All right. So, hey, everybody. I hope everybody's still doing good and awake here. We had such amazing working group contributions, and I'm so impressed and blown away. But when we put them all together like this, it's amazing to see what this community is doing. So we did ask all of you to contribute your ideas for playbooks that you would like to see, and we have the results of those. FYI, I did not edit or update the typing on any of this, so if they might look weird, it's because, people are excited and they type fast and there might be typos. But you can see here, there's a lot of things that people are very interested in seeing for future playbooks, everything from AI to governance to government, just tooling in general. So lots of cool stuff. We're going to take that into consideration, look at what we have and see what we can do. But we are short on time, so we are going to keep moving along here. Couple things that are coming up. First of all, I want to let you know that the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion SIG is currently sponsoring a new upskilling series. It's called FinOps B. So please stay tuned for more information on that and consider speaking at it. We're going to be promoting that a little bit later. We've also started to partner with She Too, which is a nonprofit organization that's focused on engaging, empowering, and educating engineering leaders. So FinOps is going to be a sponsor at an upcoming event of theirs in October in San Francisco. If anyone is interested in a discount ticket, reach out to us at hello@finops.org and we can set you up with that. Additionally, hey, this has been a hot topic, is meetups. Everybody's been talking about it. I feel like I don't even need to say anything else because it's been in the chat, but we do have a bunch of meetups coming up, and you can get even more engaged with the FinOps community. And these are all of the FinOps Foundation meetups that we have. So please consider joining and becoming even a meetup organizer.
Hey, Stacy, do you mind if I jump in with one clarification that people might not be getting? So we have both meetups and what we call road shows. They're all on the events page of the site, but the difference is the meetups are practitioners doing them in practitioner offices, and the road shows is where the FinOps Foundation staff usually gets a bigger venue in key cities. So variety of options, all great content, but there's obviously more than just this list if you look at that event site. So definitely check that out. JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.